The rain hammered against the palace windows as Camilla stood in her private chambers, staring at the 3 leather suitcases lined up near the door. Her hands trembled as she folded another silk scarf, pressing it down into the case with more force than necessary. Tomorrow morning she would be gone, away from this gilded cage, away from the whispers that followed her through marble hallways, away from a life that had become unbearable. She had planned everything down to the smallest detail. The private car would arrive at dawn, taking her to a remote airstrip where a chartered plane waited. From there, she would fly to Switzerland, then disappear into a quiet villa in the countryside where no one knew her name or her title. Her sister Margaret had arranged everything, transferring money into offshore accounts, securing false documents, preparing a new identity. After 23 years of serving the crown, of smiling through humiliation and bowing to traditions that crushed her spirit, Camilla was finally choosing herself. The clock on the mantel showed midnight. In 6 hours she would walk out of these doors forever. Her heart raced at the thought, a mixture of terror and exhilaration coursing through her veins. She had written no farewell letters. There was nothing left to say to people who had never truly listened. The royal family would wake to find her gone, and they would spin whatever story they needed to protect their precious reputation. Camilla moved to her jewelry box, carefully selecting only the pieces that had belonged to her mother. Everything else, all the tiaras and necklaces given to her upon her marriage into the royal family, would stay behind. She wanted nothing that tied her to this place. Her fingers traced the delicate pearls her mother had worn on her wedding day. That was the last time Camilla remembered feeling truly happy, before duty and obligation had swallowed every dream she had ever dared to dream. A soft knock on the door made her freeze. Her lady-in-waiting, Elizabeth, entered with a tray of tea. The older woman's eyes swept over the packed bags, but her expression remained neutral. Elizabeth had served the royal household for 40 years and had mastered the art of seeing everything while appearing to notice nothing. "Your tea, ma'am," Elizabeth said quietly, setting the tray on the side table. She poured a cup with steady hands, then turned to face Camilla directly. "The head of security has increased patrols tonight. There are guards stationed at every exit, more than usual." Camilla's stomach dropped. "Why?" Elizabeth's lips pressed into a thin line. "I cannot say for certain, ma'am, but I overheard Captain Morrison speaking with the senior officers. They mentioned your name." The cup slipped from Camilla's fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. Tea spread across the Persian rug like a dark stain. They knew, somehow, despite all her careful planning, they had discovered her intentions. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had Margaret's phone been tapped? Had someone noticed the money transfers? Or had there been a traitor among the few people she had trusted? "How long have they known?" Camilla whispered. "I believe since yesterday evening," Elizabeth replied, kneeling to clean up the broken porcelain. "I heard nothing before then. Yesterday evening." That was when she had made her final call to Margaret, confirming the departure time. Someone must have been listening. Camilla pressed her palms against her eyes, fighting back tears of frustration. She had been so close. 6 hours away from freedom, and now it was slipping through her fingers like water. What should I do? The question escaped before she could stop it. A rare moment of vulnerability in front of someone who was technically staff. Elizabeth stood, holding the broken pieces in her apron. She looked at Camilla with an expression that was almost maternal. "That depends, ma'am. Do you truly wish to leave, or do you wish to be stopped?" The question struck Camilla like a physical blow. Did she want to be stopped? Was there some part of her that still hoped this family, this institution, might fight to keep her? She thought of Prince Edward, her husband, who had not shared her bed in 5 years. She thought of the Queen Mother, who spoke to her only when protocol demanded it. She thought of the endless charity galas, the suffocating rules, the way her own opinions were dismissed as if she were nothing more than a decorative ornament. "I want to leave," Camilla said firmly. "I need to leave," Elizabeth nodded slowly. "Then you must try, ma'am. But be prepared. They will not make it easy. The crown protects its own, even when it means protecting them from themselves." After Elizabeth left, Camilla paced her room, trying to formulate a new plan. The main exits would be watched, but there were service corridors, old passages that dated back centuries. She had explored them as a younger woman, back when curiosity had not yet been trained out of her. Perhaps she could slip out through the kitchens or the staff quarters. It would be undignified, crawling through servant passages like a thief in the night. But dignity had long since ceased to matter. She changed into dark, practical clothes, trading her silk nightgown for black trousers and a sweater. Her hands moved mechanically, muscle memory taking over while her mind strategized. She would take only one small bag, something she could carry easily. The rest would have to be abandoned. Material things meant nothing compared to freedom. At 4 in the morning, Camilla made her move. She slipped into the hallway, keeping to the shadows. The palace was never truly silent. Even at this hour, staff moved through distant corridors preparing for the day ahead. She knew their routines, had memorized them over years of insomnia-induced wandering. The cleaning crew would be on the 3rd floor now. The kitchen staff would be starting breakfast preparations. Security would be concentrated at the main entrances. She reached the servants' stairwell without incident, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain someone would hear it. The narrow stairs spiraled downward into darkness. She had no light, relying on memory and the faint glow from emergency exit signs. Each step felt like a small victory and a potential disaster. One creaking board, one unexpected guard, and it would all be over. The stairwell opened into a basement corridor that ran beneath the entire east wing. Camilla paused, letting her eyes adjust to the deeper darkness. The air smelled of stone and old plumbing, a far cry from the perfumed halls above. She could hear water running through pipes overhead, the distant hum of the palace's infrastructure. This was the skeleton of the grand building, the unglamorous reality beneath the polished facade. She moved quickly now, following the corridor toward the loading bay where delivery trucks arrived each morning. If she could reach it before 5 o'clock, she might be able to slip out when the first suppliers arrived. It was risky, but every option was risky now. Her sister would be waiting at the airstrip, unaware that plans had changed. Camilla would have to find a way to contact her once she was clear of the palace grounds. The corridor turned sharply, and Camilla nearly collided with a figure standing in the darkness. Her scream caught in her throat as a flashlight clicked on, illuminating the stern face of Captain Morrison, head of the Royal Guard. "Going somewhere, Your Highness?" His voice was neutral, but his eyes were hard as steel. Camilla's escape attempt had ended before it truly began. Captain Morrison stood like a statue in the dim corridor, his flashlight creating harsh shadows across his weathered face. Behind him, 2 additional guards materialized from the darkness, their presence silent but imposing. Camilla's mind raced, searching for words, excuses, anything that might salvage this disaster. But looking into Morrison's knowing eyes, she realized explanations would be pointless. He knew exactly what she had been attempting. "I couldn't sleep," Camilla said, forcing steadiness into her voice. "I was just walking." In the basement corridors, dressed in traveling clothes, heading toward the loading bay at 4 in the morning. Morrison's tone made it clear he found no humor in the situation. "Your Highness, I have served this family for 32 years. I have seen many things, heard many stories. Please do not insult either of us with obvious lies." Camilla's shoulders sagged. The fight drained out of her, replaced by a numbing exhaustion. "What happens now?" "Now you come with me." Morrison gestured toward the stairs. "The Queen Mother has requested your immediate presence in the blue drawing room." The words hit Camilla like ice water. The Queen Mother knew. Not only knew about tonight, but was awake and waiting, ready to confront her at this ungodly hour. This was worse than being caught. This meant there would be consequences, discussions, possibly even public statements. Her escape would become another scandal the family had to manage, another embarrassment to be covered up and controlled. The walk back through the palace felt eternal. Morrison and his guards maintained a respectful distance, but their presence was a constant reminder that she was now a prisoner in her own home. They climbed the servants' stairs back to the main floors, then traversed the grand hallways where portraits of stern ancestors gazed down with disapproval. Camilla had always hated those paintings, the way they seemed to judge every action, every thought that deviated from tradition. The blue drawing room was ablaze with light when they arrived. The Queen Mother sat in her preferred armchair, still dressed in full evening attire despite the hour. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her posture rigid with authority. Beside her stood Prince Edward, Camilla's husband, looking disheveled and uncomfortable. His eyes would not meet hers. In the corner, the family's senior advisor, Lord Pemberton, observed with the detached interest of a man accustomed to managing crises. "Thank you, Captain Morrison," the Queen Mother said. "You may wait outside." Morrison bowed and retreated, though Camilla suspected he would remain just beyond the door. The Queen Mother's gaze settled on Camilla with the weight of centuries of royal authority. This woman had survived scandals, wars, and political upheavals. One rebellious daughter-in-law would barely register as a challenge. "Sit down, Camilla," the Queen Mother commanded. Camilla remained standing. It was a small act of defiance, but she clung to it desperately. "I prefer to stand," I said. "Sit down." The voice had not risen in volume, but the steel beneath the words was unmistakable. Camilla sat, perching on the edge of a sofa that had probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Her hands gripped the cushion, needing something solid to hold on to as the room seemed to tilt around her. Edward finally spoke, his voice thick with something that might have been concern or might have been anger. "Camilla, what were you thinking? Running away like a common criminal?" "I wasn't running away," Camilla replied, though the words sounded hollow even to her. "I was leaving." "There's a difference." Without a word? Without discussion? Edward stepped forward, his hands gesturing helplessly. "You're not just anyone, Camilla. You're part of this family. You have responsibilities, obligations." "Obligations?" Camilla laughed, the sound bitter and harsh. "That's all I've ever been to this family. An obligation. A duty to be managed. When was the last time anyone asked what I wanted? What I needed?" The Queen Mother raised one elegant hand, silencing them both. "Emotional outbursts will solve nothing. Let us speak plainly. You are attempting to leave the country, presumably permanently, using false documents and secret financial arrangements. Your sister Margaret has been coordinating this escape for at least 3 months, possibly longer." Camilla's blood ran cold. 3 months. They had known for 3 months and said nothing, watching her plan and hope while knowing they would never allow it to succeed. The cruelty of it stole her breath. "We could have stopped you at any time," Lord Pemberton interjected, his voice dry and businesslike. "We chose to wait, to see how far you would go, to understand the full scope of your intentions. Information is always valuable, Your Highness. Surely you understand that." "You let me believe I could escape," Camilla whispered. "You let me hope?" "Hope is not always kind," the Queen Mother said. "But it reveals truth. Now we know exactly where your loyalties lie, what you truly think of this family and your place within it." Edward paced the room, running his hands through his hair in a rare display of agitation. "I don't understand. Have I been such a terrible husband? Has the family treated you so poorly? You have everything anyone could want. Everything except choice," Camilla shot back. "Everything except freedom. Everything except the ability to live my own life. You chose this life when you married me," Edward said quietly. "I was 23 years old. I didn't know what I was choosing. I thought it would be different. I thought," Camilla's voice broke. She had thought so many things, believed so many promises, that love would be enough, that she could make a difference, that being part of something larger than herself would bring meaning and purpose. Instead, she had been slowly erased, piece by piece, until she barely recognized the woman she had become. The Queen Mother stood, crossing to the window where dawn was beginning to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "The car you arranged has been turned away. The plane has been grounded. Your sister's accounts have been frozen pending investigation into financial irregularities. The villa in Switzerland is being monitored." Each statement landed like a blow. They had dismantled her entire escape plan with surgical precision. Margaret would be furious, possibly facing legal consequences for helping her. The guilt pressed down on Camilla's chest, making it hard to breathe. "What do you want from me?" Camilla asked, exhausted beyond measure. "The question, my dear, is what we can salvage from this mess." Lord Pemberton opened a leather folder, pulling out several documents. "The press knows nothing yet, but they will soon. They always do. We need to control the narrative before it controls us." "A statement," the Queen Mother said. "You will announce that you have been struggling with exhaustion and stress. You will enter a private facility for rest and recovery. When you emerge in 3 months, you will be refreshed, grateful, and recommitted to your duties." "A facility?" Camilla's hands clenched into fists. "You mean you're locking me away?" "We're protecting you," Edward insisted. "Protecting the family. If the truth came out, if people knew you tried to abandon your responsibilities, the damage would be catastrophic." "So I become a prisoner." "You become a patient," Lord Pemberton corrected smoothly. "There's a significant difference in public perception." The Queen Mother turned from the window, her expression almost sympathetic. Camilla, I have lived this life for 78 years. I understand its constraints better than you might imagine. But we do not have the luxury of personal desires. We are symbols, representatives of something greater than ourselves. When we fail, the institution fails. Then let it fail, Camilla said desperately. Let it crumble. Maybe it deserves to. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Lord Pemberton looked shocked. Edward's face had gone pale, and the Queen Mother's eyes blazed with an emotion Camilla had never seen before. You will never say such a thing again, the Queen Mother said softly. Do you understand me? Never. Camilla realized she had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. But strangely, she felt no regret. Only a weird sense of relief at finally speaking a truth that had been festering inside her for years. Captain Morrison appeared in the doorway. Ma'am, the bags from Her Highness's chambers. What should we do with them? The Queen Mother's smile was cold and terrible. Bring them here, Captain. All of them. Captain Morrison returned minutes later, accompanied by 4 guards carrying Camilla's 3 leather suitcases. They placed them in the center of the blue drawing room like evidence at a trial. The bags looked smaller here, less significant than they had seemed in her private chambers. Her entire escape, her whole future, reduced to 3 pieces of luggage that now sat at the mercy of the Queen Mother's judgment. Open them, the Queen Mother commanded. Morrison glanced at Camilla, perhaps seeking permission, but she simply looked away. What did permission matter now? Everything had already been taken from her. Let them see what she had chosen to carry into her new life. Let them examine and judge every item, every choice. She was past caring. The guards unzipped the first suitcase, revealing neatly folded clothes. Simple things. Practical garments far removed from the designer gowns and formal wear that filled her palace wardrobes. Cotton shirts, comfortable trousers, sweaters in soft colors. The kind of clothing a person might wear while living a normal life. Running errands, meeting friends at cafes. Existing without the constant weight of public scrutiny. Lord Pemberton lifted a plain blue cardigan, examining it as if it were a foreign artifact. How remarkably ordinary, he murmured. I suppose that was the point. The Queen Mother said nothing, but her eyes tracked every item as the guards continued their inventory. Books came next. Novels Camilla had purchased secretly. Stories about women who made bold choices and lived with the consequences. A journal, its pages filled with thoughts she had never dared speak aloud. Photographs of her parents, her sister, friends from her life before royalty had claimed her. Edward picked up one photograph, studying the image of Camilla at 18, laughing at some long-forgotten joke. I don't remember you ever laughing like that, he said quietly. Not in all our years together. You never gave me a reason to, Camilla replied before she could stop herself. The second suitcase revealed more personal items. Toiletries, medications, a small radio she had kept hidden for years because the Queen Mother disapproved of modern music. Letters from Margaret, carefully saved and tied with ribbon. A shoebox filled with mementos from before her marriage, ticket stubs from concerts, postcards from trips taken when she was still free to travel without security details and official photographers. But it was the third suitcase that changed everything. When the guards opened it, the Queen Mother's expression shifted from cold disapproval to something harder, more dangerous. Inside, carefully wrapped in soft cloth, were documents. Not just any documents, but files marked with official seals, correspondence marked confidential, photographs that should never have left the royal archives. What is this? The Queen Mother's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper, which somehow made it more terrifying than if she had shouted. Camilla's mouth went dry. She had forgotten about those papers, tucked them away in a moment of rage months ago and never removed them. Insurance, she had told herself. Evidence of things the family wanted hidden. Leverage in case they ever tried to control her too completely. Now that insurance had become a weapon pointed directly at her own heart. Lord Pemberton moved quickly, snatching up the documents before Camilla could react. His eyes scanned the pages, his face growing progressively paler. Your Majesty, these are classified communications. Financial records that were sealed by court order. Photographs from private family meetings. I know what they are, the Queen Mother said coldly. She turned to Camilla, and for the first time genuine anger burned in her eyes. Did you plan to sell these? To some tabloid or foreign journalist? Is that how you intended to fund your escape? No. Camilla stood abruptly, her hands shaking. I would never. I just wanted them in case I needed protection, in case you tried to destroy me completely. Protection? Edward's voice rose, genuine hurt breaking through his usual reserve. You thought we would harm you? That you needed leverage against your own family? You're not my family, Camilla said, the words tumbling out like water through a broken dam. You've never been my family. You're an institution that happens to include the man I married. There's a difference. The Queen Mother approached Camilla slowly, each step measured and deliberate. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. These documents represent a security breach of the highest order. Their possession alone could be considered treason. Treason? Camilla laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. For taking papers? For keeping records of things that actually happened? For stealing state secrets? Lord Pemberton corrected, his lawyer's mind already working through implications. For removing classified materials from secured locations. For potentially planning to use them against the Crown. Camilla looked around the room at these people who had controlled every aspect of her life for over 2 decades. Edward, who claimed to love her but had never fought for her, never stood up to his family on her behalf. The Queen Mother, who saw people as chess pieces to be moved and sacrificed for the good of the game. Lord Pemberton, who measured everything in terms of public relations and legal liability, and the guards witnesses to her humiliation, who would report every word of this conversation. You want to charge me with treason? Camilla asked quietly. Then do it. Put me on trial. Let the world see what really happens behind these walls. Let them know what you do to people who dare to want something different. Don't be dramatic, the Queen Mother snapped. No one is charging you with anything. But these documents cannot leave this room. They will be destroyed, and you will sign a statement declaring that you took them without authorization and returned them willingly. And if I refuse? The silence stretched thin as wire. Lord Pemberton cleared his throat, his discomfort visible despite his professional demeanor. Your Highness, if you refuse, the family would have no choice but to pursue legal action. Your sister Margaret, who clearly aided your escape attempt, would also face investigation. The financial transfers alone could result in serious charges. There it was. The threat laid bare. Comply or watch Margaret suffer for trying to help her. Camilla thought of her sister, the only person who had truly understood her misery, who had risked everything to give her a chance at freedom. She could not let Margaret be destroyed because of her own failed rebellion. I'll sign your statement, Camilla said, defeated, but I want something in return. The Queen Mother's eyebrows rose slightly. You are hardly in a position to negotiate. I want time away from here. Real time, not locked in some facility where doctors report my every word back to you. 3 months in the countryside at the estate in Scotland, alone except for minimal staff. No official duties, no appearances, no statements to approve. Edward started to protest, but the Queen Mother raised her hand. She studied Camilla with calculating eyes, weighing options and outcomes. 2 months, she said finally, at the Scotland estate. Minimal staff as you requested, but Captain Morrison will maintain a security presence and you will check in weekly with Lord Pemberton. 3 months, Camilla countered, surprised by her own audacity. And I choose my own staff. 2.5 months. Morrison selects the security team. You select household staff from approved personnel. The Queen Mother's tone made clear this was the final offer. Camilla wanted to refuse, to demand more, but she recognized victory when she saw it. 2.5 months of relative freedom was better than being imprisoned in a medical facility or trapped in the palace under constant surveillance. Agreed. Lord Pemberton produced papers with remarkable speed as if he had anticipated this negotiation. Camilla read through the dense legal language, her eyes catching on phrases like voluntary return of materials and acknowledgement of breach of protocol and waiver of future claims. It was a trap disguised as a compromise, a way to ensure she could never use those documents or speak about them without facing immediate legal consequences. She signed anyway, her signature sprawling across the bottom of each page. What choice did she have? Margaret's safety depended on her cooperation. Her own survival, such as it was, required her submission to these terms. Captain Morrison gathered the documents, handling them with gloved hands as if they were contaminated. I'll see these properly destroyed, Your Majesty, he said. No, Camilla interjected. I want to watch them burn. If I'm giving them up, I want to see it happen. The Queen Mother considered this, then nodded. Very well. Morrison, Have a fire prepared in the formal fireplace. We will witness the destruction together." As the guards built up the fire, Camilla stood beside the Queen Mother in uncomfortable silence. The old woman's face revealed nothing, but Camilla sensed something beneath the surface. Not sympathy exactly, but perhaps understanding. The Queen Mother had lived in this gilded cage far longer than Camilla. She had probably faced her own moments of desperate rebellion, her own dreams of escape. "Did you ever want to leave?" Camilla asked quietly, so only the Queen Mother could hear. The old woman's lips compressed into a thin line. For a long moment, Camilla thought she would not answer. Then, barely audible, she said, "Every day for the first 10 years. Then I stopped wanting. It's easier that way." The fire crackled to life, hungry flames reaching upward. Morrison brought the documents forward, feeding them to the fire one by one. Camilla watched her insurance. 3 days later, Camilla found herself in a car heading north toward Scotland, watching the city fade into countryside through rain-streaked windows. Captain Morrison sat in the front passenger seat, silent and professional, while a young driver she did not recognize navigated the motorway. The official story, released that morning through carefully worded palace statements, spoke of a private retreat for rest and reflection. The press had accepted it without question, as they usually did when the palace spoke with unified voice. Margaret had tried to call 17 times. Camilla had not answered, could not bear to hear her sister's voice, knowing that she had failed them both. The accounts had been unfrozen after Camilla signed additional documents, swearing Margaret had no knowledge of the stolen papers. It was a lie, but a necessary one. Margaret would understand. She always understood. The Scotland estate appeared through the mist like something from a Gothic novel, all grey stone and narrow windows. Camilla had visited twice before, both times for formal hunting parties she had endured rather than enjoyed. Now it would be her prison, though a more comfortable one than the alternatives. The car crunched up the gravel drive and she could see staff gathered at the entrance, a small contingent compared to the palace's hundreds of employees. Mrs. Helen Fraser, the estate manager, stepped forward as Camilla emerged from the car. She was a woman in her 60s, sturdy and practical, with kind eyes that had seen decades of royal visitors. "Your Highness, welcome. We've prepared the East Wing for your stay. I hope you'll find it comfortable." "Thank you, Mrs. Fraser." Camilla's voice sounded hollow even to herself. "I'm sure it will be fine." The interior of the estate was warmer than expected, fires burning in several rooms to chase away the Scottish damp. Morrison conducted a security sweep while Mrs. Fraser gave Camilla a brief tour. The East Wing consisted of a bedroom, sitting room, private library, and a small dining area. Large windows overlooked gardens that were probably beautiful in summer, but now looked gray and dormant under autumn skies. "We've kept the staff minimal as requested," Mrs. Fraser explained. "Just myself, 2 housekeepers, a cook, and the gardener. Captain Morrison and his team will occupy the West Wing. You'll barely know they're here, but Camilla would know. She would feel their presence constantly, the reminder that she was being watched, that freedom was still just an illusion." Morrison appeared in the doorway as if summoned by her thoughts. "The perimeter is secure, Your Highness. There are cameras at all exits and entrances. For your safety, of course." "Of course," Camilla echoed, not bothering to hide her bitterness. After Morrison left, Mrs. Fraser lingered, her weathered hands folded at her waist. "Ma'am, if I may speak plainly, I've managed this estate for 38 years. I've seen many people come here to hide from things, to heal from things, to escape things. These walls don't judge. Sometimes that helps." Camilla felt unexpected tears prick her eyes. "Thank you, Mrs. Fraser, that's kind of you to say. There's a path through the gardens that leads to the old chapel ruins. It's private, peaceful. Many find it helps with thinking." Mrs. Fraser smiled gently. "I'll have dinner sent up at 7 unless you prefer otherwise." Alone finally, Camilla explored her rooms with growing despair. Everything was tasteful, expensive, comfortable. Everything was also a reminder of her failure. She had come so close to escape, had tasted the possibility of freedom only to have it snatched away. Now she was here in luxurious captivity, counting down 75 days until she would be returned to the palace and the life she could not bear. Her phone buzzed. Another call from Margaret. This time Camilla answered, unable to avoid her sister any longer. "Camilla." Margaret's voice was sharp with worry. "Finally." "I've been terrified. What happened? The palace statement was so vague and my accounts were frozen for 2 days. And then suddenly everything was back to normal. But no one would tell me anything. I got caught, Camilla said simply. They knew everything, Margaret. They had known for months. It was never going to work. The plane waited for 3 hours. Margaret's voice broke slightly. I stood at that airstrip watching the sky, thinking you would come, hoping you would make it. Then palace security arrived and informed me you would not be traveling. They were very polite and very clear. I'm sorry. Camilla pressed her forehead against the cold window glass. I never meant to put you at risk. I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about you. Where are you now? What did they do to you? Camilla explained the confrontation, the documents, the negotiation. Margaret listened in silence, and when Camilla finished, she let out a long breath. 2.5 months in Scotland. It could be worse. It is worse, Camilla insisted. I'm still trapped. I just have a slightly larger cage now. Then use the time, Margaret said firmly. Stop thinking about escape and start thinking about survival. Figure out what you actually want, not just what you want to run from. Because running clearly isn't working. The words stung because they were true. Camilla had been so focused on leaving that she had never really considered what she was running toward. Switzerland, the villa, the new identity, all of it was just geography. It did not address the fundamental problem of who she had become and who she wanted to be. I don't know who I am anymore, Camilla admitted quietly. I've been the dutiful wife, the royal consort, the proper princess for so long. I don't remember what I wanted before all of this. Then maybe that's what Scotland is for, Margaret suggested. Not punishment, discovery. You have time, space, privacy. Use it, Camilla. Really use it. After the call ended, Camilla sat in the gathering darkness thinking about her sister's words. The rain had stopped, and weak sunlight broke through clouds, painting the gardens in shades of gold and amber. She could see the path Mrs. Fraser had mentioned, winding between overgrown hedges toward a stone structure, partially collapsed but still standing. She grabbed a coat and ventured outside, needing movement, needing air that was not filtered through palace ventilation systems. The path was muddy from rain, but she did not care. Her expensive shoes squelched through puddles, and cold wind whipped her hair free from its careful styling. It felt good, real in a way nothing had felt real for days. The chapel ruins were smaller than she expected, just 3 walls and part of a roof, open to the sky where the rest had fallen centuries ago. Stone benches lined the interior, covered in moss and lichen. Camilla sat on one, not caring about the damp, and looked up at the patch of gray sky visible through the missing roof. How had her life become something she needed to escape? She had married Edward believing in love, or at least in the possibility of love. He had been charming, attentive, everything a young woman dreamed of in a partner. But somewhere between the wedding and now, between the public appearances and private silences, they had become strangers performing roles rather than partners building a life. The family had consumed her gradually, like water wearing away stone. First her opinions, dismissed as naive. Then her interests, redirected toward appropriate charitable causes. Her friends evaluated and found wanting or dangerous. Her time, scheduled and managed until spontaneity became impossible. Her identity, reshaped until she could barely recognize the woman in the mirror. But she had let it happen. That was the truth she had been avoiding. She had accepted each small surrender, justified each compromise, believed each time that things would get better if she just tried harder to fit in. The family had not stolen her life. She had handed it over piece by piece, thinking she was being dutiful when she was really being cowardly. Footsteps crunched on gravel, and Camilla tensed until she recognized Mrs. Fraser approaching with a blanket and a thermos. Thought you might be cold, the older woman said, offering both. The chapel is beautiful, but not exactly warm. Camilla accepted gratefully, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders and sipping hot tea from the thermos cup. Did you know I was here? Security cameras, Mrs. Fraser said apologetically, gesturing toward a discreet camera mounted on a nearby tree. Captain Morrison asked me to check on you. So even here I'm being watched. Mrs. Fraser settled onto another stone bench with the ease of someone comfortable with silences. My husband left me 23 years ago, she said suddenly. Ran off with a woman from Edinburgh, left me with 2 teenagers and a mortgage I could barely afford. I spent 2 years being angry, being hurt, planning elaborate revenges I never carried out. Then one day I woke up and realized I was still giving him power over my life even though he was long gone. Camilla looked at the woman with new understanding. What did you do? I started choosing myself. Small things at first. I took a class in watercolor painting, something I had always wanted to try. I cut my hair short even though he had always insisted I keep it long. I stopped cooking his favorite meals and started making foods I enjoyed. Eventually, the small choices became bigger ones. I applied for this job, moved to Scotland, built a completely new life. But you had freedom to make those choices, Camilla pointed out. I'm trapped by obligations, by duty, by contracts and agreements and expectations. Are you? Mrs. Fraser asked gently. Or have you trapped yourself by believing you have no choices? Because from where I stand, you still choose how you spend your days, what you think about, who you become in. The weeks in Scotland unfolded with surprising rhythm. Camilla woke each morning without alarm clocks or ladies-in-waiting hovering with schedules. She ate breakfast when hungry, dressed in comfortable clothes chosen for warmth rather than appearance, and spent hours walking the estate grounds regardless of weather. The security cameras tracked her movements, and Captain Morrison's team maintained their vigilant presence. But gradually she learned to ignore the surveillance, to create private spaces within her own thoughts that no camera could penetrate. She started writing, filling journal after journal with observations, memories, questions she had never dared ask aloud. The act of putting pen to paper felt revolutionary, a reclaiming of voice and perspective. She wrote about her childhood, about the girl she had been before duty rewrote her story. She wrote about Edward, trying to understand when love had calcified into obligation. She wrote about the Queen Mother, attempting to see beyond the stern authority to the woman who had once admitted she too had wanted to escape. Mrs. Fraser became an unexpected companion. The estate manager possessed wisdom earned through hardship and a pragmatism that cut through Camilla's tendency toward dramatic despair. They took tea together most afternoons, conversations ranging from estate management to philosophy to the complicated navigation of expectations versus authenticity. You're angry, Mrs. Fraser observed one afternoon as they sat in the library, rain drumming against windows. That's progress. Anger means you've stopped accepting everything as inevitable. Camilla traced the rim of her teacup, considering this. She was angry, though she had spent years being taught that anger was unbecoming, especially in someone of her position. I'm angry at myself mostly, for being so compliant, for believing that if I just tried hard enough I could make them love me, respect me, see me as more than a convenient prop in their royal theater. And now I realize I was asking the impossible. They can't see me as fully human because the institution requires them to see everyone, including themselves, as symbols rather than people. The Queen Mother wasn't being cruel when she said personal desires don't matter. She genuinely believes that. She spent her entire life believing that. Mrs. Fraser nodded slowly. Understanding why someone hurts you doesn't mean you have to accept being hurt, but it does make it easier to stop taking it personally. The insight shifted something in Camilla. She had spent years interpreting the family's treatment as a referendum on her worth, as evidence of her inadequacy. But if they were trapped in their own limited worldview, if they literally could not see beyond institutional requirements to individual humanity, then their rejection said more about their limitations than her value. She called Margaret that evening, feeling stronger than she had in months. Her sister answered on the first ring, as always. You sound different, Margaret said immediately. Better, what's happened? I've stopped waiting for them to change, Camilla explained. I've stopped hoping Edward will suddenly become the man I thought I married, or that the Queen Mother will suddenly value my happiness. They are who they are. The institution is what it is. Waiting for them to evolve is like waiting for stone to become water. So what will you do? I don't know yet. But I'm starting to think the question isn't how do I escape them, but how do I be myself despite them? There's a difference. Margaret was quiet for a moment. That sounds dangerous. Trying to be authentic within a system designed to erase authenticity. Maybe. But running away wasn't working either. At least this way I'm not giving up. I'm just changing the battleground. The conversation stayed with Camilla as the days continued their march toward her eventual return to palace life. She began thinking strategically about what she could control versus what she could not. She could not control royal protocols or public expectations or the Queen Mother's disapproval. But she could control her responses, her choices within constraints, her refusal to internalize their diminishment of her. She started making lists, practical assessments of her life and marriage. What aspects were truly non-negotiable, and what parts had she assumed were required without ever testing boundaries? She thought about the charities she had been assigned versus causes she actually cared about. She considered her relationship with Edward, trying to determine if there was anything left worth salvaging, or if they had become too damaged by years of mutual disappointment. Captain Morrison appeared one morning while she was walking the gardens. His presence was unusual. He typically maintained professional distance, observing without engaging. "Your Highness, might I have a word?" Camilla gestured for him to walk with her. Morrison was perhaps 50, with the bearing of a career military man and eyes that missed nothing. She had always found him intimidating, part of the surveillance apparatus that made privacy impossible. "I've been asked to assess your state of mind," Morrison said bluntly, "to report whether you remain a flight risk." The directness surprised her. "And what will you report?" "That depends on your answer to a question. Are you planning to attempt escape again?" Camilla considered lying but decided against it. Morrison would see through deception. His entire career involved reading people. "No, I've realized escape isn't the solution. Running away just means I'm still defined by what I'm running from." Morrison nodded, something like approval flickering across his weathered face. "Good. Because for what it's worth, I've watched you these past weeks. You seem more present, more solid than you did in the palace, less like you're disappearing." The observation caught Camilla off guard. She had not expected empathy from the man whose job involved containing her. "You've been watching me for years. Did you see me disappearing before?" "Everyone in the palace is disappearing," Morrison said quietly. "Some faster than others. The institution consumes people. It's not personal. It's just what happens when symbolism matters more than humanity." They walked in silence for a few moments, this unexpected honesty hanging between them. Finally, Camilla asked, "Why do you stay? If you see what it does to people, why remain part of it?" Morrison's smile was brief and sad. "Someone has to protect the people inside from the people outside, and occasionally from themselves. It's not a perfect answer, but it's the one I have." Camilla thought about this as Morrison returned to his duties. Even the guards, the people enforcing her constraints, were trapped in their own ways by the institution. Everyone playing assigned roles, everyone diminished by a system that valued image over truth. The weekly call with Lord Pemberton arrived like clockwork each Friday afternoon. These conversations had become exercises in diplomatic evasion, Pemberton asking pointed questions about her mental state and plans, while Camilla provided carefully neutral responses. But this week, emboldened by her new clarity, Camilla decided to push back. "I want to renegotiate my charitable commitments when I return," she announced without preamble. "I want to work with organizations focused on mental health and women's autonomy. Real work, not just ribbon-cutting ceremonies." Pemberton's sigh was audible through the phone line. "Your Highness, your charitable portfolio was carefully selected to avoid controversy and align with the family's values. Mental health and women's issues can be quite political." "Everything is political," Camilla countered. "Pretending otherwise is just another way of maintaining comfortable fictions. I'm telling you what I want. Whether the family agrees is their choice, but I'm done accepting assignments without input. This is quite a change in attitude. Consider it growth." Camilla kept her voice steady, channeling the strength she had been building through weeks of reflection. "I have several weeks left here. I suggest you use them to prepare the family for the fact that I'm returning different than when I left." After ending the call, Camilla felt simultaneously exhilarated and terrified. She had thrown down a gauntlet, declared her intention to claim agency within her gilded cage. The family could refuse her requests, could maintain their controlling grip, but she had made her position clear. That alone felt like victory. Mrs. Fraser found her that evening in the chapel ruins, her usual spot for contemplation. The older woman carried a bottle of wine and 2 glasses, an unprecedented breach of protocol that made Camilla laugh. "I thought we might celebrate," Mrs. Fraser said, pouring generous servings. "Captain Morrison mentioned you gave Lord Pemberton quite the surprise today." "Morrison tells you about my phone calls?" "Not officially, but he and I have worked together long enough. He respects what you're trying to do here. We both do." They drank in comfortable silence as stars began appearing in the darkening sky. Camilla thought about how strange life was, that she would find understanding and support not from her husband or family, but from staff members whose job involved managing her captivity. "Do you think I'm being foolish?" Camilla asked. "Thinking I can be authentic within a system designed to prevent authenticity?" Mrs. Fraser considered the question carefully. "I think you're being brave. Foolish would be expecting it to be easy or believing you can change the institution. Brave is choosing to change yourself to claim your humanity, regardless of whether they acknowledge it. What if it breaks my marriage? What if Edward can't accept a wife who has her own opinions and priorities? Then maybe your marriage was already broken, and you're just finally admitting." The drive back to the palace felt different than the journey north had been 10 weeks earlier. Camilla watched the countryside give way to city with calm rather than dread. Her journals and renewed sense of self packed carefully in bags that bore no resemblance to the desperate escape luggage Captain Morrison had confiscated. She was returning not as a fugitive caught and contained, but as someone who had chosen to engage rather than flee. Morrison caught her eye in the rearview mirror. "Ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Camilla replied honestly. "Though I suspect they're not ready for me." The captain's smile was brief but genuine. "No, ma'am. I suspect they are not." The palace appeared through morning mist, its familiar towers and walls no longer feeling quite so much like a prison. Camilla understood now that the real cage had been inside her mind, built from fear and the desperate need for approval. The physical building, the protocols, the expectations, all of those remained unchangeable. But her response to them, her refusal to let them define her completely, that was within her control. Edward waited in their private sitting room, looking older and more tired than she remembered. 10 weeks apart had revealed how distant they had grown, how their marriage had become an elaborate choreography with no emotional truth beneath the performance. He stood when she entered, uncertain how to greet a wife who felt like a stranger. "You look well," he said finally. "Scotland agreed with you." "Scotland gave me time to think," Camilla replied, settling into a chair across from him rather than beside him. The physical distance felt appropriate, honest. "We need to talk, Edward. Really talk, not just exchange pleasantries and pretend everything is fine." His face paled slightly. "About the escape attempt? I thought we had moved past that. Not about the attempt. About why I felt escape was necessary. About what our marriage has become and whether there's any way to salvage something real from it." Edward sank into his chair, hands gripping the armrests. For a long moment he said nothing, and Camilla could see him wrestling with years of avoidance, of choosing comfort over truth. "I don't know if I can be the husband you need me to be," he admitted quietly. "I don't know if I even know how." The honesty surprised her. She had expected defensiveness, justifications, the usual deflection. "Why did you marry me, Edward, really?" "Because you seemed light and alive and everything the palace wasn't. I thought maybe some of that could rub off on me, make this life feel less suffocating." He laughed bitterly. "Instead, I watched the palace drain all that light out of you. Watched you become as hollow as I felt. And I did nothing to stop it because I didn't know how. You could have fought for me. For us. You could have told your family that my happiness mattered, that our marriage required space to breathe and grow. I was raised to believe duty comes first, always. Personal happiness is selfish, frivolous. My mother has said that to me 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways." Edward met her eyes and she saw genuine pain there. "But you're right. I should have fought. I should have protected what we had. Instead, I let it die by inches and pretended not to notice." Camilla felt tears threatening but pushed them back. Grief could come later in private. Now she needed clarity. "So where does that leave us?" "I don't know." Edward's voice cracked slightly. "Do you want a divorce?" "Because if you do, I'll understand. I'll do what I can to make it as easy as possible, though the family will resist." The question hung in the air between them. Divorce was the logical conclusion, the clean break that would let them both pursue authenticity separately. But Camilla found herself hesitating. "I think," she said slowly, "that we need to try something neither of us has been brave enough to attempt. We need to be honest about what we want and what we can realistically offer each other. And what do you want?" "I want to do work that matters. Real charitable work with organizations I choose. I want the freedom to have my own opinions, even when they differ from the family's positions. I want to stop performing happiness for cameras while dying inside." She paused, then added, "And I want you to stop pretending you're content when you're clearly miserable too." Edward nodded slowly. "The family will see that as rebellion. Let them. I'm done letting their fear of change dictate my entire existence." The Queen Mother summoned Camilla that afternoon, exactly as expected. The old woman sat in her formal receiving room, every inch the monarch she had been trained to be. But Camilla noticed things she had missed before: the slight tremor in hands that had once been rock steady, the thinness that spoke of age and declining health, the way the Queen Mother's eyes held weariness beneath their sharp assessment. "You've returned changed," the Queen Mother observed without preamble. "Captain Morrison's report suggested as much, but I wanted to see for myself." "I have changed," Camilla agreed, refusing to apologize or soften the statement. "Scotland gave me perspective I desperately needed. Perspective that will make you more difficult to manage. Perspective that will make me more authentic. Whether that's difficult for you depends on whether you can accept that I'm a person, not just a chess piece in your institutional games." The Queen Mother's eyebrows rose slightly, bold words from someone who attempted to flee her obligations and was caught. "I'm not fleeing anymore. But I'm also not pretending to be someone I'm not. I have conditions for my continued participation in royal life. You have conditions." The Queen Mother's tone was dry, almost amused. "How modern of you." Camilla pulled out a written list, the product of weeks of careful thought in Scotland. "I want to redefine my charitable work. I want meaningful involvement, not ceremonial appearances. I want the ability to speak publicly on issues that matter to me, even if they're controversial. I want private time protected from public obligations. And I want the family to stop treating me like a problem to be managed and start treating me like a person deserving of basic respect." The Queen Mother took the list, scanning it with the same careful attention she applied to state documents. When she finished, she set it aside and studied Camilla with an unreadable expression. "And if I refuse these conditions? Then you'll have a much bigger problem on your hands than a daughter-in-law requesting reasonable autonomy. You'll have someone who stops cooperating entirely, who becomes openly hostile to institutional demands, who makes your management of public perception vastly more complicated. You're threatening me. I'm stating reality. I tried escape and you blocked it. Fine. But you can't force me to smile and perform if I refuse. You can constrain my location and access, but you can't control my thoughts or my willingness to play along with comfortable fictions." The silence stretched between them, heavy with decades of unspoken power dynamics finally being acknowledged. The Queen Mother's face revealed nothing, but Camilla sensed calculation happening behind those sharp eyes. Finally, the old woman spoke. "You remind me of myself at 30, before I learned that compromise is how institutions survive, that personal authenticity is a luxury we cannot afford. With respect, ma'am, I think that's exactly the kind of thinking that makes institutions rot from within, when symbolism matters more than truth, when image matters more than substance. You create a beautiful facade with nothing real behind it, and you believe you can be both authentic and royal, that you can serve the crown while maintaining individual identity." The Queen Mother's skepticism was evident. "I believe I have to try, because the alternative is becoming what you described. Someone who stops wanting things, who accepts erasure as inevitable. I'm not willing to do that." The Queen Mother was quiet for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice carried a quality Camilla had never heard before. Not quite regret, but something close to it. "I will consider your requests. Some may be possible. Others will require negotiation. But understand this. The institution will not change for you. It will adapt minimally, grudgingly, only as much as necessary to maintain stability. I'm not asking it to change for me. I'm asking for permission to be human within it." There's a difference. Lord Pemberton arrived the next day with a revised agreement, the family's response to Camilla's demands. She read through it carefully, noting what had been granted and what had been denied or modified. She could work with 3 charities of her choosing, provided they underwent family approval for potential controversy. She could speak publicly on pre-approved topics with her own voice rather than strictly scripted statements. She would have 2 private days per month with no public obligations. The family would treat her with respect, though exactly what that meant remained conveniently vague. It was not everything she wanted, but it was more than she had dared hope for when planning her escape 10 weeks earlier. More importantly, it represented acknowledgement that she had agency, that her needs mattered even if only to prevent bigger problems. "Will you sign?" Pemberton asked, watching her with his usual careful assessment. "Yes, but understand this, I'll hold the family to these terms. If they try to slowly erode these concessions, if they revert to treating me as a problem to be managed rather than a person, I will push back." Consistently and publicly if necessary, Pemberton's smile was thin. "I would expect nothing less. You've become quite formidable, Your Highness," Margaret visited that evening, slipping in through a private entrance to avoid press attention.